Chosen ones, God said, this 4th of July will be a personal exodus for you. Please listen. Your personal exodus is a shift in consciousness, not geography. The great exodus was never about escaping a place. It was about escaping a mindset. Chosen one, hear me. Your Egypt is not a location. It is a state of being, a mental condition of fear, lack, limitation, and submission to external power. And this 4th of July, God is not leading you across dusty roads, but through the corridors of your own mind. You have carried the weight of circumstances as if they were master over you. You have walked in chains that were never physical, only internal, chains made of inherited beliefs, generational trauma, and repeated assumptions that say, this is just the way life is. But God is saying no more. Your true deliverance does not come when your situation changes. It comes when you assume the consciousness of the promised land. The moment you shift your awareness from bondage to liberty, you are free, even if the world hasn't caught up yet. Freedom begins in the unseen. Everything else will mirror what you accept as real. You've been praying to get out, waiting for doors to open, for people to help, for systems to align, but the real exit has always been internal. You must come out of Egypt by the way of your imagination. You must leave behind the familiar land of hopeless thoughts, of not enough, of I can't, and enter the promised land of I am. The Israelites could not enter the land flowing with milk and honey because they still thought like slaves. Even after being physically freed, the same danger lurks today. Many are free in the eyes of others, but within they still dwell in Egypt. They still fear Pharaoh. They still long for the leeks and onions of yesterday's pain because pain was predictable. But today you are being called higher. You are being asked to no longer define yourself by what has happened, by what was denied, by what was taken. You are being called to stand as the image and likeness of God, to think from your desired state, not toward it. This is not a motivational idea. This is the law of all manifestation. You cannot live in lack and expect abundance to show up. You must walk in abundance within, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, before it can reflect back to you. That's the exodus. The belief that you must work your way toward freedom is the great lie. You start from freedom. You begin from victory. You declare yourself whole even if the doctor's report says otherwise. You assume wealth even if the bank balance says zero. You embody love even if heartbreak still echoes. Why? Because what you assume to be true in imagination, God fulfills in reality. Egypt taught you to react. God teaches you to create. Egypt says, see it, then believe. God says, believe it, and you will see. And now, on this sacred day of liberty, your deliverance begins not with action but with awareness. You shift your inner position. You withdraw attention from what is and plant your mind in what must be. That shift is your crossing. That inner movement is your Red Sea parting. Don't wait for the evidence to begin believing. Don't wait for the Pharaoh of your past to finally let go of you. He never will. You must walk out of his grip by refusing to serve him with your thoughts any longer. The moment you say, I no longer belong here, heaven responds, but be warned, the journey is not easy. Egypt will call you back. The wilderness will scare you. Your old self will beg to survive. But if you stay firm in the new assumption, if you feed the new state with persistence, then the desert will bloom and the promised land will appear before you. The Exodus was never meant to be physical alone. Its deeper meaning is the evolution of consciousness. It's not about where you live or who surrounds you. It's about how you think, feel, and assume reality to be. The 4th of July, then, is not just a holiday. It is a prophecy. It is a spiritual call to rise. You are not being invited to escape life. You are being summoned to rise above it by changing your perception of it. The prisons we remain in are built by the beliefs we won't question, and so, God says, this day I set before you freedom and bondage. Choose freedom. Don't look for a Moses. Don't wait for a sign in the sky. The deliverer is already within you, whispering, you are free now, walk in it. The journey begins with the decision to no longer identify with your old self, that identity, the one that said, I can't, I'm too late, I'm not worthy. That self must die so the new you may live. Your exodus begins when you stop reacting to what was and start living from what is promised. The Red Sea will part the moment your inner world aligns with God's word, not before. Circumstances may still roar, but the truth is this: you are no longer in Egypt. You left when you chose to no longer believe in bondage. You left when you imagined yourself healed, even while sick. You left when you smiled in the dark and said, "I trust." And if you keep walking in that direction, the land of promise will meet you. It must, for God cannot lie. This 4th of July, don't just light fireworks, light your spirit, ignite the flame of divine identity, declare with boldness, "I am free now, I am healed now, I am provided for now." Let the world catch up. Let Pharaoh scream. Let your old life mourn the loss of its grip. You are walking out, not with chains, but with treasure, not in fear, but in faith, and the journey is not long. It is as quick as a shift in thought, a change in assumption, a bold declaration that says, "I am that which I have asked for." That is your personal exodus, and it begins now. Bondage ends when you change the assumption that keeps you bound. The prison you fear, chosen one, is not made of bricks or steel. It is built from assumption. You are not bound by the situation, but by the meaning you give it. And until you awaken to this truth, you will remain in chains, even with the doors wide open. Bondage is not what happened to you. Bondage is the belief you formed about yourself because of it. It's not the rejection, the poverty, the sickness, or the delay that holds you. It is your acceptance that these things define you. You assume lack, and it becomes your reality. You assume you're unworthy, and everything around you reflects that back. The world does not act independently of your inner state. It responds to it with perfect precision. You must understand, assumption is the cause. The moment you assume yourself to be free and refuse to entertain anything that contradicts that assumption, the chains begin to fall. Not because God suddenly decides to act, but because God already did, and now you finally believe it. You don't receive freedom. You assume it, and by law you receive what you assume. Many of God's chosen are still enslaved, not because they lack faith, but because their faith is still placed in the wrong things, in facts over truth, in history over destiny, in fear over promise. You say, "I'm trying to believe." But as long as you are trying, you are affirming the assumption that you are not yet what you desire to be, and so you wait for a change that never comes. But bondage ends not when your outer life shifts, but when you say, "It is done," and refuse to argue with appearances. God's word is not a suggestion. It is a decree. You are the head and not the tail. You are healed. You are more than a conqueror. These are not poetic phrases. They are spiritual realities that only become real in your world when you assume them as true now. Do not wait to see the fruit before you believe the seed is working. The moment you claim it as yours, without needing proof, is the moment heaven begins to mirror your belief. Bondage is the habit of waiting to feel free. But that is a trap. Freedom is not a feeling you chase. It is a state of being you enter. By assumption, you must dare to see yourself differently, not based on what you've experienced, but based on what God has spoken. The Israelites wandered for 40 years because their assumptions did not match God's promise. They believed more in giants than in God's word, and so do many today. You believe more in the threat of Pharaoh than in the authority of the I Am. But the I Am is the key. Whatever you place after I Am becomes your assumption, and therefore your creation. If you say, "I am stuck," the world conspires to make it true. If you say, "I am free," the same world shifts to reflect that inner declaration. The assumption is the power. Your life is not held back by events, but by the meaning you give those events, and how you identify with them. You must stop waiting for deliverance to arrive from the outside. God's pattern has always been the same. He sends deliverance through a shift in consciousness. That's what the burning bush moment was. Moses didn't change Egypt with strategy. He changed it through divine awareness. He met God in the wilderness, discovered the name I Am, and carried that revelation into bondage. You, too, must carry that awareness into your bondage. You do not fight your way out. You assume your way out. You are not poor trying to become rich. You are rich shedding the illusion of poverty. You are not sick hoping to be healed. You are whole letting go of the belief in illness. This reversal is the foundation of all true transformation. The world calls it denial, but heaven calls it truth. for what is unseen is more powerful than what is seen. The inner reality is what causes the outer to change, but it must be lived, felt, and held as real within, even while the world denies it. The law is simple. Change your assumption and your experience will follow. Refuse to identify with your past. Refuse to speak from your pain. Refuse to act like a victim of circumstances, and instead begin to live as a child of divine inheritance. Speak from the outcome, not toward it. Think from the end, not about the end. You cannot be free and still think like a prisoner. That's why many remain in invisible bondage. They want the fruit of freedom, but still water the roots of fear. And yet, the moment you dare to believe differently, radically, even foolishly in the world's eyes, something shifts, a door opens, a way is made. Why? Because your assumption is no longer at war with your promise. You are in alignment, and where there is alignment, there is manifestation. You must become violent with your old self, the version of you that rehearses defeat, that seeks pity, that plays it safe. That self must die. You kill it not by force, but by starving it of belief. You simply refuse to let it speak anymore. You silence it by feeding your new assumption until it becomes your only truth. That's when miracles happen, not because God changed his mind, but because you changed yours. You stopped agreeing with your wounds and started agreeing with your word. And now what was bound must be loosed. What was delayed must be released, not in time, in consciousness. God never delayed your promise. It was always done, but it could not come until you assumed it as your identity. The prodigal son was restored not when he returned, but when he remembered who he was, and so must you. Chosen one, your bondage ends the moment you no longer think like someone in bondage. Assume your freedom, and everything else will align. This is not magic. It is divine law. The world bends to your inner conviction, and that conviction, held in faith, becomes the vibration that breaks every chain. So today, on this sacred journey, stop asking, how do I get free? And start declaring, I am already free. Say it when nothing looks different. Say it when you feel tired. Say it when the pressure rises. Say it until the whole atmosphere bends to your assumption. That's not denial, it's creation. That's not fantasy, it's faith, and it is by faith that you walk out of every prison into the life that was always yours. The Pharaoh in you must be overthrown, chosen one. You must come to the understanding that Pharaoh is not a person outside of you. It is a voice within. It is the inner tyrant who rises every time you dare to believe. It is the old self dressed in pride and fear who resists every spiritual promise, mocks every word of faith, and demands evidence before obedience. The Pharaoh in you is subtle but powerful. It is the one that whispers, stay where it's safe, when God says go. It is the one who tightens its grip when you begin to think higher, dream bigger, believe deeper. You must recognize this voice for what it is, the final obstacle to your freedom, and on this sacred journey, this personal exodus, you are not just escaping Egypt, you are overthrowing Pharaoh. Because God cannot crown the new version of you while the old still rules your mind. Pharaoh was not just a ruler in Egypt. He was the symbolic embodiment of every controlling force that resists transformation. And in your life, that force exists in thought, assumption, and emotional habit. Pharaoh is the fear of failure that keeps you from starting. He is the pride that tells you to fight your battles in your own strength. He is the voice of shame reminding you of who you used to be and convincing you that you're not worthy to become more. This Pharaoh must be overthrown, not negotiated with, not reasoned with, not tolerated. He must be confronted and dethroned, for as long as he reigns, you will never walk in your promised land. Understand this deeply. Pharaoh doesn't fear your God. Talk, he fears your God. Walk. He isn't disturbed when you read the scriptures or repeat affirmations. He trembles when you become the Word made flesh. He tightens his grip when you stop praying from desperation and begin to pray from identity. He resists not because you are weak, but because you're finally threatening the false kingdom he built inside you, and the moment you decide to obey the divine vision within, that moment war breaks out. The battle isn't with people, it's with your lower self. You must overthrow Pharaoh by faith. That means you must starve every thought that tells you you're stuck, that it's too late, that this is how it's always going to be. You must arrest the inner critic, silence the inner slave master, and decree, I will no longer serve this mindset. For too long you've bowed to Pharaoh by entertaining his lies. You've surrendered to him by calling your bondage realistic. You've obeyed him by shrinking your dreams to fit your environment, but no more. The voice that once controlled your decisions now has no throne. You are not bound by your past. You are bound by your allegiance to the voice of your past. And that allegiance must end. You cannot be loyal to Pharaoh and faithful to God at the same time. The two are enemies. Pharaoh wants you to perform for approval, while God calls you to rest in identity. Pharaoh demands that you earn your worth, but God declares you worthy by being. Pharaoh builds bricks with no straw and still demands more, but God says, my grace is sufficient. And so, this internal war is not about your circumstances. It is about who you believe you are. You see, Pharaoh's greatest weapon is not force, but deception. He tells you that you are nothing without him, that you need his permission, his structure, his systems, that life without him is dangerous and uncertain. He tempts you to stay in the comfort of predictability, even if it means living beneath your destiny. But now you are being called to walk out, by faith, not by sight. You are being called to dethrone every false authority you've obeyed within your own mind. You are not weak. You are just under the illusion of captivity. You are not lost. You are just disoriented by the noise of your inner tyrant. And God says, let my people go. That's not just a declaration over nations. It is a divine command over the soul. Let the old patterns go. Let the small thinking go. Let the guilt and the shame and the overthinking go. Pharaoh is losing power every time you choose peace over panic, every time you choose truth over facts, every time you choose to imagine boldly instead of react fearfully. Do not expect him to release you easily. The closer you get to breakthrough, the louder he becomes, but do not be discouraged. That is proof that his kingdom is collapsing. Hold your ground. Speak to your inner Pharaoh and say, you have ruled long enough. Dethrone him with every act of faith, every confession of power, every bold move that dares to contradict your former self. You are not who you used to be. The version of you that Pharaoh controlled is gone. You are not returning to that place of internal slavery. Even if the wilderness looks uncertain, even if manna hasn't yet fallen, even if the Red Sea hasn't yet split, keep walking. The throne is empty now, even if your feelings haven't caught up. The Pharaoh in you is not eternal. Only God within you is eternal. So when you hear the voice of fear, remind it that you serve a higher authority now. When the old habits resurface, remind them they no longer have jurisdiction. You are under new governments, spiritual law. You are ruled now by love, faith, grace, and divine power. The true exodus is not leaving behind a physical place. It is the overthrow of your internal Pharaoh. That's where freedom begins, and on this Independence Day, this is your call to revolution, not against others, but against every false belief that has claimed to rule you. Overthrow him with a renewed mind. Overthrow him with divine imagination. Overthrow him with silent confidence. Overthrow him with the I am that can never be enslaved. For the Lord is with you, and if God be for you, who can be against you? Not even the Pharaoh within. His reign is over. You must walk as though the promise is fulfilled, chosen one. The promise is not something you wait to receive. It is something you walk in as though it's already yours. The power of the unseen is activated not by hoping for it to come, but by acting from it as already done. Too many live in hesitation, waiting for the evidence before they move, waiting for confirmation before they speak, waiting for comfort before they believe. But that is not faith. That is bondage to the senses, and the Word of God speaks not to your senses. It speaks to your consciousness. If God said the land is yours, you do not wait to see crops growing. You start preparing the harvest. If he said you are healed, you do not wait to feel strong. You begin to live as the healed. This is the divine law of manifestation. You must assume the end and act from that place as though it were real, even if nothing in the visible world agrees with you. Faith does not wait for permission. Faith walks boldly into the fulfillment. And on this 4th of July, This personal exodus is marked by your willingness to move in alignment with what you have only heard in spirit. The land is not given to those who analyze, it is given to those who move. The children of Israel did not see the sea part and then step forward. No, they stepped into the waters first. Only then did the miracle respond to their movement. The miracle is not the cause of your faith, it is the result of it. You must walk like it is done even when nothing in the environment supports that belief. This is the boldness of the chosen, to feel joy before the breakthrough, to smile in the storm, to prepare rooms for blessings that haven't yet arrived, and to act with the confidence of one who has already received. For the law of assumption decrees that you must occupy the state in consciousness before the experience can materialize. Do not say, when I see it, I'll believe it. Say instead, because I believe it, I now see it. This inner stance is your key to divine release. The Israelites who perished in the wilderness were not evil. They simply refused to walk as though the promise was true. They saw giants instead of grapes. They focused on lack instead of abundance. Their feet were in the desert, but their minds were still in Egypt. And so they died in delay, not because God failed, but because they would not walk in fulfillment. That's the tragedy of assumption left dormant. It becomes a promise unfulfilled not because it was denied, but because it was never lived from. You must walk as though God has already moved. You must talk as though the blessing has already arrived. You must dress like the vision, live like the future, give like the overflow is already present. Your reality obeys your inner conviction, and when your inner world walks in agreement with the Word of God, the outer world must bow. This is why heaven does not respond to desperation. It responds to faith. You can cry all day long, and yet nothing shifts until you believe, not in theory, not in ritual, but in full identification. You must identify with the outcome, not just pray toward it. Your words must match it. Your posture must reflect it. Your habits must honor it. Don't say, I'm waiting on God, while living like a prisoner. If you truly believed you were chosen, how would you carry yourself? How would you plan your day? How would you respond to opposition? That is how you must begin to move. Now, every act of faith you take becomes a vote against Pharaoh and a declaration for your future. When you walk as though the promise is fulfilled, you become a living prophecy. You declare without words that your God is faithful. Your walk becomes your worship. Your motion becomes your message. This is why the enemy tries to paralyze your faith, not with outright lies, but with distractions, doubts, and delays. Because once you begin to act like it's done, the entire landscape must bend, but it starts within. You must dwell in the state of the answered prayer. Close your eyes and imagine it clearly, not as a dream, but as a current reality. Then open your eyes and move through the world in agreement with what you saw. That is the walk of faith. That is the essence of divine alignment. This is not pretending. It is creating. You are not fooling yourself. You are freeing yourself. For what you dare to walk in, you begin to manifest. If you walk in bitterness, you manifest more things to be bitter about. If you walk in expectation, you unlock the flow of what has been waiting. You must break the habit of walking in hesitation. The wilderness is not your home. The promise awaits, but it cannot come to you. You must come to it through movement, through imagination, through boldness. Even your posture must change. You cannot slouch into victory. Stand tall, speak from power, act like the one who knows they've been chosen. Because you have, and this day, this 4th of July, is your spiritual declaration of independence. You are not who you were. The old self was bound, waiting for proof, but the new self walks in possession because it has assumed the promise as done. Stop praying from distance. Stop begging for what already belongs to you. Speak as though your Father has already heard you, and walk as one whose prayers cannot return void. You were never meant to wait endlessly for change. You were meant to become the change by walking in it. The walk is what separates those who visit the promise in imagination and those who dwell in it by faith. And the difference is everything. God never said, wait and see. He said, go, walk through the land, possess what I've already given you. And now the same instruction is being spoken to you. Don't wait for the music to start dancing. Don't wait for the sun to start shining. Don't wait for the break through to start thanking. Move, sing, shine, act, not because you're forcing something, but because you are responding to what is already done in spirit. This is your personal exodus, and your feet, guided by faith, will take you where your heart has only dared to imagine, but you must walk like it's done, because in the eyes of God it already is. This 4th of July, you leave mental slavery and step into spiritual sovereignty, chosen one. This is the hour of your release, not from man, not from government, not from outward chains, but from the invisible shackles of mental slavery that have ruled your inner world for far too long. This 4th of July is not merely a national holiday. It is your personal declaration of spiritual independence. You have been walking through life as if the outer world holds dominion over you, as if the opinions of others dictate your worth, as if circumstances have the final say, but no more. Mental slavery is the condition where a person, though free in body, still thinks, acts, and lives as if they are bound. It is the silent permission you give fear to rule your steps, the hidden agreement with limitation, and the habitual bowing to doubt when you should be walking in dominion. And God is saying now, enough, rise up, my child. I did not create you to be subject to the illusions of the flesh. I created you to rule through the Spirit. The lie of mental slavery is that you need something outside of yourself to change before you can be free. But the truth of spiritual sovereignty is that everything you need is already within you. You don't have to wait for the system to shift, for the money to appear, for the approval to be granted. No, freedom begins the moment you claim it. It is not something to be begged for. It is something to be assumed. You are not a victim of this world. You are a vessel of divine power, called not to react, but to create, not to bow, but to reign, not to conform, but to transform the very environment around you by the light that burns within. Until now, you may have thought freedom meant escaping your situation, but true freedom means nothing external can ever define or diminish you again. It means you no longer serve the pharaohs of fear, doubt, shame, or people-pleasing. It means your identity is rooted in I am, not in how you were treated or what you went through. Mental slavery causes you to repeat cycles, chase validation, and doubt your own power. But spiritual sovereignty teaches you to speak from the throne of your inner world. You command the storm not because of ego, but because of identity. You know who you are, and once you know who you are, everything else must align. This is not arrogance. It is spiritual alignment with truth. A king does not need to prove his royalty to peasants, and you do not need to prove your value to anything beneath your promise. You were not born to bow to fear. You were born to reign in the realm of consciousness. And when you reign within, the world without can no longer intimidate you. You must stop identifying with struggle as your story. It is not your destiny. It was your teacher. It refined you, but it does not define you. Every delay, every denial, every disappointment was allowed not to break you, but to awaken you to your true self, and that self is not weak, that self is divine. And this Independence Day you declare, not with words alone, but with action and awareness, that you are no longer a servant to what used to enslave you. The cage was never locked. The walls were never real. They only existed in thought, and now those thoughts must be overthrown. You do not need permission to walk in power. You need only agree with God's truth. Whom the Son sets free is free indeed, and not free eventually. Free now, free to love without fear, free to give without manipulation, free to dream without delay, free to act without the need for applause. That is spiritual sovereignty. It is not about having control over others. It is about having full dominion over yourself. Your emotions no longer govern your destiny. Your past no longer writes your future. Your fears no longer speak louder than your faith, because now you live from the inside out. You no longer chase freedom, you carry it. You no longer seek peace, you embody it. You no longer beg for breakthroughs. You birth them by becoming the very frequency of what you've prayed for, and that transformation is the true exodus. Not leaving a physical land, but leaving behind a mental world built on lies, trauma, limitation, and self-doubt. You must say today, I will no longer think like a slave when I am a child of God. Refuse to entertain the thought that you are stuck, small, forgotten, or unworthy. Those are the mantras of mental bondage. Instead, declare, I am chosen, I am whole, I am sent, I am sufficient, I am. And once you declare it, live from it, let your decisions match your identity. Let your walk reflect your worth. Let your environment respond to the new you rising in full awareness of divine truth. Pharaoh had you in chains, but God placed a crown on your spirit. Which one will you honor? Which voice will you serve? The voice of the oppressor still echoes, but its power has been broken. The moment you assume your divine seat in consciousness, all the false rulers begin to fall. You become unshakable not because life stops testing you, but because your center is rooted in truth. You stop fearing the valley because you remember that kings are made in the wilderness, not the palace. The wilderness was never your punishment. It was your proving ground, and now that you've come through the fire, it's time to take your place. No more second guessing, no more shrinking, no more playing small. This is your coronation. This 4th of July is your soul's liberation ceremony, not by might, not by struggle, but by spiritual revelation. You are free because you say so. You are powerful because you believe so. You are sovereign because God has declared it so. Now walk in it. Let the world see what freedom looks like when it lives in the heart of a believer. Let your enemies watch as you prosper in peace, not revenge. Let your past bow to your present. Let your inner throne shine brighter than any outer noise. You are no longer available for mental slavery. Your spirit has ascended, your heart has been unlocked, your soul has been awakened, and your steps from this day forward will not echo chains, but thunder like royalty. This is your spiritual Independence Day. And nothing will ever enslave you again.